Welcome to Real Women of Bastrop, where small town charm meets big time grit. I'm your host, Lindsay Kana, sixth generation Bastropian, realtor, and community cheerleader. Around here, we're more than big hair. We're business owners, mamas, creatives, and quiet powerhouses. And this podcast, well, it's pulling back the curtain on the stories, struggles, and strength of the women who keep this town running. Because every woman has a story, and around here, we believe yours matters. Let's get into it.
Hello, my name is Priscilla Ruiz.
I know you, of course, from the bond committee and us working together to try to get that school bond passed, thank goodness, which was amazing. And then you're on the school board, I know. But yeah, anything else you want everyone to know? You're in Bastrop.
So, Yep. So I've been in Bastrop a little while now. I guess I'm going on 12 years. And so it's been a while. I relocated to the area. So I'm actually a native Texan, but I'm from West Texas. So that's the Midland, Odessa area. I lived there for quite some time until I experienced a career transfer, job transfer, and eventually retired. And so my parents were excited about relocating, but not where we lived in Austin at the time. So Mom came out, looked at Bastrop, fell in love with Bastrop, and that's kind of how we decided really on Bastrop. So we relocated parents, ourselves. My husband and I have 2 adult daughters. We have 3 grandkids.
Wow.
And so I was ready, I think, Lindsay, for a big change. And so I had always set a goal for myself early on in my career to retire at 40 or somewhere close to that.
Yeah.
And so I was so thankful and blessed that I was able to do that.
That's amazing. I mean, let me just stop you right there, because when you say retire at 40, everyone's going to want to know how. How did that happen? What did you do?
Well, I always tell people that I've been working since I was 6.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, and that's not too big of a stretch. My dad owned a little new and used furniture business when I was growing up. So I suppose I was always really just enamored with the business world from a very young age. So I worked in the store for a long time and was able to just watch him interact with people. So I always say, like, my first training with communication and interpersonal skills was watching my dad, interact with customers. So very soon after high school, though, just immediately after high school, I joined the Army and went and just received so much training around discipline that it was insane. So I became a very disciplined person extremely early in my life. And I was always a goal setter. And I think if I look back at one of the things that sometimes I'm overly critical about myself on this, but also I think it's helped me, is that I'm sort of a list maker and I like to check boxes.
Same. You're
you like it too?
Language. I will, if I don't have anything on my list, I write something down, like random, like go clean off the counter. Sure, I can check that. I mean, I just need to have something to check off. So I'm with you.
Yeah. So I was always kind of and that was really just for life itself too. I thought, well, okay, if I find the right guy, then I'll get married, and then I want to have kids, and then, this or that. And so all of the things, right? It was just not just career wise, but just really life wise. And I guess it has to do with really how disciplined my parents always were. I grew up Catholic. We had a very regimented way of kind of doing things in our household. But then also I was a pretty sickly kid growing up. And so everything was pretty organized, for me at a very young age. So I think all of those things sort of, you're always like a product of your life experiences, those things sort of melded, together and then made the person that I became. In very short order, I began a financial services career and went to banker school. And years ago, like, you could go to banker school. I mean, that was a thing. They trained you for all the things. And then eventually I crossed over into wealth management. Became a sales director for a tri-state area. And so my career just sort of took off. And then I just, was always an avid saver. And my dad was never a fan of debt and always said we needed to pay for everything cash or, pay it off as soon as possible. So I still live by that kind of frugal standard. And, we're not billionaires by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I still kind of supplement my parents a little bit here or there, because that's just the generation, that I'm in. And then, our kids from time to time, but we just live very simply and modestly and happily. And I just said, when I was 20, probably 3 years old. I said, I want to be done with all this when I'm 40, 45, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
So I was. Now my husband still works, I have to admit, but, it takes very little. Like I said, our standard of living is pretty low. So
Yeah.
So
No, I love that.
go ahead. I'll let you ask me another question.
Yeah, no, I wanted you. So, I mean, it definitely makes sense now after explaining, kind of how you are structured and organized, and just that you have a goal, and that really hits home. But it's also easy to get sidetracked along the way, right? With life, things that happen in your life. And you mentioned having, these moments of like renewed clarity, which love that phrase, those words. So talk to me about that a little bit. When you mentioned childhood illness, can you tell me more about that? How that affected you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did have a pretty miraculous experience with the doctor. And back in the 70s, and 80s, we didn't have medical technology, right? The way we have it now. So everything you underwent, like in terms of like surgeries and just procedures, was more than it is today. So today you might have a similar procedure, and because of medical advancements, it's, not invasive. It's not considered invasive. Well, back then everything was invasive.
Right.
And so my kidneys I just had pretty big problems with them my entire childhood. And they thought, well, let's watch it and see if it self-corrects. Never self-corrected. And so the urologist kind of had to go through a pretty intense surgery when I was about 11, I guess. So I struggled with illness from like the age of 3 to age 11 or 12.
Wow.
And then it was just gone. So it was just a miracle. And of course, I ended up with the massive scar and story to tell, but
sure.
I'd love to tell the story. Now, as a result of that, he said, while we have corrected the issue, she may never be able to carry a child full term. So, like for like a Catholic girl, I came from a big Catholic family. Like I have siblings, I have lots of aunts and uncles and cousins, and I was so just distraught and worried about that. And I think part of that was, the trauma of just childhood illness kind of stays with you until, you start kind of unpacking it. And I didn't realize I had to unpack any of it until very late in life.
It's funny that you say that, because this popped into my head this morning as my daughter, my middle child, Kendall, she told me she has these LED lights in her room. And so she has a little remote control. So she sleeps with it, she said, under her pillow in case in the middle of the night she wakes up and she wants to turn it on. And I started thinking, it just triggers things, right? And so I grew up with really bad asthma, horrible asthma, to where, I would have to do the nebulizer in the middle of the night. But I had an inhaler, and I would always sleep with it under my pillow in case. And I remember almost every night I had to wake up and take my inhaler. But I guess I just, when you live with something day in and day out, it's the norm for you, but you don't realize how different it is for someone else. And like thinking through, like having to have that inhaler with me all the time,
yes.
Saved my life. So I think, you said unpacking it later in life. Yeah, that just really hits home, because you have to think through all those things that you went through that other kids did not. And also like how that makes you stress and worry about not having, kids one day.
And I know now, in retrospect, right, I was an overthinker. And so in my young adult life, I was just overthinking. And now I know what that is, and I have a name for it, and I can tie it to some, to all the things. And so much better about it, I guess, now in my 50s. Of course, a lot of things are hindsight's 2020 in your 50s. Sure. But so as I look back to just that checklist lifestyle again, I realized once the doctor told me, maybe you can't have kids, but then the moment that I visited a doctor who said, you can, we just have to closely monitor, make sure things go well, I was like, let's go. Like today, I want that baby right now.
Yes.
And so, so I had 2 girls, and then we kind of just said, okay, maybe this is good enough, for my body to handle it. In any case, I was just blessed with my babies, and happy. And so, and now that they're adult women, it's so interesting to watch them repeat some of the behaviors, but they don't repeat it necessarily from trauma. It's just from watching me, like as a crazy mom,
Yeah.
overthink and,
For
So
sure.
I think another byproduct too, of just renewed clarity in my life is that I really felt like there was a village who saved me on top of, my medical doctors and physicians and the numerous medical people I was always around. But I had a village of community as well. So, youth leaders, youth mentors, my teachers, my principals who are so understanding of like my fragility. Because that's what you are, is just a medically fragile kid. And so, in my adult years, I was like, that's what I care about. My passion is other people's kids.
That
And
makes
so
sense. Yeah.
that's renewed clarity. So when we talk about like working on these bonded initiatives together, I just knew that was for me. I became a youth minister pretty quickly coming into Bastrop. A priest approached me and said, we need a program. Can you help build that? I said 100% yes, absolutely. So it did not take, I had no reservation on that. I just knew it. I said, this is my calling. This is my time, my chance, to give back to other people's kids. And so that's really kind of helped me with renewed focus and clarity and mission, new mission.
Yeah. Well, you're such a blessing to the Bastrop community, and, using what you experienced as a child in such a positive way for our community is amazing. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love Bastrop. So
it's
here
great.
for the long haul.
Good. You better not go anywhere. Okay. So you mentioned in your career, and you kind of dove into that, hardcore and advancing. And so what did success mean to you when you were in those like career hustle years, and how has that changed, or has it changed?
Well, I was in corporate America for a many number of years where the glass ceiling kind of still existed. There was not a lot of promotion amongst women, and certainly not women of color. So I really was sort of a, if you just looked across the room, you could pick me out of a room and say, oh my gosh, there's the one that doesn't fit. So I was pretty accustomed to that. And it almost, I guess, coupled with my military experience, because that's predominantly male as well, but coupled with that experience, it just sort of fortified my inspiration to grow and to continue to be the best, at what I was doing. So I was very competitive. I would say, I always wanted to, excel for the right reasons. And the right reasons to me at the time were to make my parents proud, to make my parents, a lot of kids will say, oh, I did it for this or that or the other. But at the end of the day, like, I think we all have this little voice inside of us that says, oh my gosh, if I can make my parents proud, that was a big deal. So I think probably those were like the drivers for me. And then I also felt like I made a commitment to myself through prayer, and just really my commitment to God affirming me in my career that when enough was enough, it would be enough. And then I would be done. I made that commitment a long time ago, and I'd renew that like every single day, every single year. When it's time for me to move on, God is going to make this very known to me. It will be something it'll be something I can separate from. So I did everything I wanted to do, Lindsay. I traveled all over the place. I had wonderful clients. I had wonderful experiences. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, but nothing goes on forever, right? So it was time for me to kind of look at the next mountain and say, hey, I want to climb that mountain.
Yeah.
And so they don't all look the same, and the landscapes are different, but I said, you working on a school board, I would challenge any like person I ever worked with that, earned decent salaries, to sit on a school board. And most of them would say, forget it. I'm out of here, Pete. Are you crazy?
I've heard it's a big undertaking, a big challenge. We'll say that.
But it's rewarding.
I know.
That's the difference, right?
Well, when you're doing it for the right reasons, which you are, yes, 100%, if and we could go on a tangent about that topic, but yeah, I think whenever you're doing something for the right reasons, it's always going to work out in your favor, and you're always going to end up helping, someone along the way. So tell me about that moment that you said you were praying and asking God to kind of show you, when it's enough. What was that? Do you remember that moment? Was it a day? Was it a moment, or a combination of things?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. So I was actually, it's so funny. I was actually in the running for top 5 performers in my company nationwide. And it was probably the worst time ever. And I was just like, really, God? Like, this is the time that you want me to exit stage left?
Yeah.
But I had had a death in the family. I had my daughter was entering into some struggles at the time. And, you know, we were seeing a spiritual director at the time. And, you know, there was just, I think it was just sort of like this perfect opportunity that God used to say, you know, this isn't the only thing that I have planned for your life. And so I had a spiritual director tell me one time, you know, we always talk about, you know, trying to disconnect from certain things in our life, right? And sometimes how difficult that can be. And he would say, when actually, he says, when you discern and you go to prayer, God will make it easy for you to detach, because, you know, detachment shouldn't be like monumentally difficult. It should be something that God has already prepared you for, and you're ready. Honestly, I really, once I kind of had it in my mind and decided this is what I was going to do, I think my manager out of San Diego and my coworkers were they just lost their minds, and they were completely floored.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on with you? You know, it was all the back talk, office talk. She's going somewhere else. You know, she's a competitor. You know, she's doing this, she's doing that. There was all this, you know, hearsay, but it was none of that. It was just, even, you know, finally there were these things that were happening in my life that had nothing to do with my work, that said, hey, let me just pray about this some more. And then eventually God was just like, you know, you're already detached from this. Like, you made this decision a long time ago, you know? So it was actually not terrible. It was easy, but it had to do with my own kids, and it had to do with focusing on, you know, the things that were most important to me. Like, as I look at like what's important, pyramid spell, like, you know, your kids are everything, your family.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's important. I love that you're tuned in and that you do pray about it. And, you know, whether you pray, journal, whatever, but just having some kind of silent time to unleash and let go and put your thoughts out there, and really ask for feedback or a sign, whether it's God, the universe, whatever. I feel like this is just something important to do, and will bring you more moments of clarity and say, hey, you know, this isn't working out for you. Trust your gut. Yes. Oh, some people call it a gut feeling. I think, though, that you do have to make it known to the universe what you want and ask for a sign. I just do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, our daughter actually is a therapist. She's a director at a behavioral health hospital now. And Hannah, she's done such a great job in her little life. She always says that, you know, she says it's interesting how really just the healthy coping, you know, mechanisms that we have are just all around us. You know, they're just normal everyday things that we can just plug right in and take a, you know, mindful moment and, you know, just sit inside, breathing exercises. So, you know, I think we have maybe overcomplicated it a little bit, just as a society, because we just have so many more distractions than we ever had before. But I was telling my husband the other day, we were out walking and we do a lot of like cardio together. And I was looking up at the clouds, and we've had a lot of clouds because of a lot of rain recently, but clouds were moving kind of slow. And I said, you know, it's so funny. I said, I just had like a childhood memory. I couldn't do a whole lot, but as a kid, you know, I'd lay down outside in the grass, and I would look up at the sky, and I'd see the clouds moving, and it would come over the sun. And then I would count the seconds for like, once the cloud moved, I was like, I gotta count the seconds for the next cloud to come and cover the sun. And I was like, who has that much time?
Wow.
To count the seconds between clouds? But like, what a cool just memory. And like, how come I don't lay in the grass and do that anymore?
I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and it was someone, actually it was a few weeks ago, it was someone talking about grounding and how, I mean, this person, he goes out and he actually hugs a tree, right? He literally puts his arms on a tree and has a moment every day. And I thought, okay, but I do practice grounding. I'll go outside barefoot and just stand there and just like open my arms. And my husband's like, I said, just try it. Come on. Doing? I took him out there with me last week, and he was like, Lindsay, I was like, just do it. He's barefoot. Our arms are open. Of course, all these cars start going by. He's like, oh, it's like, it's fine. Who cares?
That's precious. I mean, honestly, like, and our ages, you're such a young woman still, but just the age groups, like we, because of, we just didn't have the distractions that we have now, or the ability to just kind of be plugged in most of the time. We just did it naturally. I didn't know that was called grounding.
Sure, exactly. Well, no, as a kid, like, I mean, our girls, we're on property, so I know it's different for our girls than it is for some that are in more of a subdivision with houses next to each other, but our girls will run out barefoot all the time. And so, and I remember as a kid, that was just kind of the norm. You go run out barefoot, you play until like 8 at night, and there's no phone or any distractions, no one telling you to come home. And so, yeah, I think there are less opportunities for that type of play and connection with the earth.
So we just have to be a little bit more, conscious and make a conscious effort, toward that. And I do with our grandkids, we do that, with our grandkids who kind of kick and scream at times, but at the end of it, they're just happy, to put sand between their toes. And yeah, life is so good.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I know you care so much about kiddos, and now we know why, but what role do you think the community plays as a whole in raising and supporting kids who aren't our own?
Yeah, so I have done about a decade of youth ministry, and I think what's unique about Bastrop really as a county, even not just, in our little town, but even as a county, is that you do have so many ways to be involved with your own church. And I do see a lot of our community members trying to connect in with families in their community through church. So that's a huge thing. I'm amazed at how many churches we actually have in that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But, secondly, the school districts are the largest employers of these areas. And so, without trying to sound like a commercial, I think a lot of ways that parents are tuned in to kind of what their kids care about is really, through school and school engagement and activities. Yep. And that's not to leave out my homeschoolers, because I love my homeschool population. I love my charter school kids. Like, I love all my kids who attend different, types of academic programs. But I think that is, even if you're a homeschooler, you usually have a co-op where you have a way to connect in with other families. And so I think that is those two are huge as far as community involvement. The third way, and perhaps a little bit more difficult, is carving out time, right, to be part of something extraordinary. And when I say extraordinary, it's like, I'm going to mentor another person's child, and I'm going to take time out of my day to go and do this. I'm going to take time out of my day to volunteer and chaperone the next youth summit. I think you had Crystal on just recently. Yes. And so as also a co-creator of the youth summit alongside youth, we do get a wonderful adult population. If I could go back through the years and say, what would I change? What would be different? I would love to have a different group every time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not that same 5, 6, 7%, of folks that are coming out, right, to support. Yeah. And those events aren't just, not just specific to that particular type of programming, but even sporting events, lots of our parents support our booster programs and sports and extracurricular events. I mean, and so to the extent that we can do that for other people's kids and cheer them on, it's a wonderful thing to go stand on Main Street, and just cheer the bus go by.
I love that.
To the playoffs or whatever it is. I think we had one gal who was part of the weightlifting team. She was the only one going to state, or she was going to some, fantastic event that we'd never made it to before. And so you just have people that just say, this is not my child, but we're a village, so we got to stick together and make sure we're supporting. So I think in the smallest sense, even like you and I have supported kids by saying, we've got to build schools. We've got to make sure that we have, ample opportunity for every child to have a seat, a space in the classroom. And so, there's the gamut is there. Like you can do as much as, or as little as your schedule, will allow for. And it doesn't have to be, but I will tell you, in the smallest sense, I've got moms who make, who have made done food preparation for us. And that's just a thing, it's a thing that you think is so small, but it really isn't. Like you're providing nutrition for a whole bunch of kids who are participating in an activity. And it's a big thing. I mean, community wise, I have so many, my wish list is big, but I know that we do it so much better, Lindsay, than a lot of other
I
communities.
feel like we do.
So great.
I feel like Bastrop is really a great community, with a lot of involvement from community members. And, at times you look around and you see the same people doing, all the things. So, and we also have, and I know this as a realtor, we have people, the younger, demographic is moving here and they have kids and they want to be involved. So I think, getting the word out there and, Michaela Joyce, she does a great job with the downtown Bastrop, and she's kind of, pushed that out for the whole, when we went on the football team and that kind of thing down on Main Street. So really spreading the word digitally, because I know a lot of, younger folks are on social media platforms all day, right? Or for work. And so just getting the word out. But I do feel like our community is very cohesive in the sense that we do want the best for our children, and that is, first and foremost.
Yeah. And I think what's funny, and I didn't say this, but because I thought it went without saying, but I guess I should say it. People are so generous, here, I always find, when I'm praying about something that we've got to do, and I go, I don't know where we're going to get the money for this, Lord. And my husband, I almost got fired from our family because my husband's like, you can't be writing any more checks for stuff. What are you doing, lady? So, but then I would just pray, and I was like, Lord, we need this. These kids, they've got to have this, or whatever the case. And then it just comes. Our community is so generous. Yeah. So I'm very proud of that also.
Yeah. Good. Okay, lady, let's see. Okay, one last question.
Okay.
When life has felt overwhelming or heavy, what's something that has always brought you back to yourself? And I feel like I know the answer, but...
Oh, you do? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. Well, I'm going to say prayer, but...
Yeah, that's one. But to know my playful side, it's also dance.
I love it.
Yeah, dancing and singing. Girl, get me in a karaoke. And
you like to karaoke? I'm terrified of karaoke. I'm like the one that I love to watch it, but don't put me up there.
Oh, I'm not any good by any stretch of the imagination, but I will tell you, I will cut a rug.
I love it.
And I will go to a karaoke place. Love it. And so it's an activity I love to do with teens as well. It's just an all, because people love to watch it. Even if they want to do it, watch.
Yeah. Now I will do the TikToks when my girls, they come up with all these things, and I'm just like, just show me what to do. It needs to be quick. I don't have a lot of memory to remember the long. Give me a few moves. So
but y'all have done some funny stuff. Did you guys do the tortilla slap thing? Or
we did that. Sean and I did that when I was pregnant with Colin, which makes it extra special.
I watched it over and over and over again.
Yeah, that was a fun one. But no, we love to do stuff like that too. It kind of just brings you, I don't know, it brings me joy, and it's a way to connect with the kids too. But yeah, for you, dancing and singing, that's fun. Yeah.
That's kind of a cultural thing too. We like that. Mexican culture, you're always going to see us, at a party, dancing or singing or whatever, even within family. So, food. Oh my gosh. And food.
Yeah. Lots of food. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to share today before we hop on?
I just want to affirm you a little bit, if I may.
Yes.
I have just watched you over the years, and I wanted to, I hope it doesn't sound condescending at all, but I'm so proud of you, Lindsay. I really am so proud of you. I think you have you've embarked on so many different aspects of life that also have been on my bucket list and dream. And it's kind of that too. When I watch you and other young women just kind of saying, hey, I'm going to throw this out there. And and it's something that's always been kind of in the back of my mind on the bucket list. It just renews me. I can do it too.
Yeah. I think that means so much.
I can do it. So
well, I hope so. And I hope others think that too. You never know if you're going to fail or succeed. And what does fail or succeed mean, right? So
exactly.
You just have to do the thing and put yourself out there. And I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And you just, anytime you need to pick me up, you call me.
Hey, I'm dealing with a teenager and a preteen right now. So they keep me very grounded. I'm really not doing a whole lot right in this house, but
I'll tell you, when they get to be, I would say mine were, I'd say mid-20s. Oh my gosh, complete, it was just a switch. It was almost like a Yes.
They like you and you're cool.
They were just like, what? I mean, thank you, Mom, for whatever.
Yes.
So you'll get all that and you'll just be like, really? It took you that long to figure it out. No, I'm just kidding.
Like, what took you so long? I love that. Good. Well, I have something to look forward to.
Well, I've really enjoyed the podcast and I keep up every week. So thank you.
Good. Yeah, we've had some wonderful women and great stories. And I've been really thankful for the response. So I appreciate you.
That's it for this episode of Real Women of Bastrop. If today's story moved you, made you laugh, or reminded you of the power of community, share it with a friend and please leave us a quick review. It helps more people find these stories and the women behind them.